It's been 1 year since Kiran Ahuja took the top post at the Office of Personnel Management. In her role, she oversees the management of more than 2 million federal civilian employees. Director Ahuja, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
It was just the day after you were sworn in when President Biden issued his executive order on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Tell me about the progress that you've made on that implementation.
Absolutely. It's an important endeavor on our end as an agency that has a leadership role in this effort, and we feel very fortunate that the president has charged OPM as well as a number of other agencies to really look long and hard at our various practices within the federal government. I would say that, we know this is a best practice when it comes to, really a best business practice when it comes to emphasizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So for the past number of months, and really recently back in March, agencies released their strategic plans. They sent those over to OPM. We've been doing a number of technical assistance reviews and really looking up and looking through to kind of find those best practices. So, a big part or chunk of this past year has been spending time within their agencies talking about the different ways that they need to embrace diversity, equity, inclusion.
But what critics will say is, the federal government, as with any employer, should just hire the most qualified person without worrying about gender or race or disability or whatever.
Well, I will say that within this executive order, it's a very broad definition of what we're talking about when it comes to diversity. Yes, it is related to race and ethnicity, but we're talking about veterans, we're talking about individuals living in rural parts of our country, we're talking about those living with disabilities. It's a very broad sense of what we mean about diversity, and that is because as a government, we can only serve our country in the best way possible by having individuals who come from these vast and varied experiences. And so, we've taken this past year to really do the work inside the agencies to understand how are we looking at hiring, how are we looking at promotions, how are we supporting individuals on training and development? Is that happening in an equitable fashion in our agencies?
Speaking of hiring, you released several hiring authorities over the last year. Talk about what they are and how they've impacted recruitment and retention.
Absolutely. Well, we've been very busy on the policy side of things, and a couple of hiring authorities that we've been really excited about that I think we want to continue to work on are those focused on early career talent. We've provided 2 authorities that make it a lot easier to bring in individuals as post-secondary students, as well as those who are recent graduates. We're in the midst of revamping the Pathways program, and we are going to be issuing regulations to make some changes to the Pathways program. And that's been really the signature internship program in the federal government. It hasn't had sort of a refresh in about 10 years. And there have been some challenges, quite honestly, and some of the hurdles that agencies have not been able to overcome, or the sense that it hasn't been as easy to utilize. So we've been getting a lot of that feedback, so that's a big part of what's coming. But these 2 hiring authorities focus on post-secondary and recent graduates has been very helpful for agencies to do the recruiting on site, to identify students, and also to actually expand the pay. So in many instances, you can pay a student or a grad up to $72,000 GS-11, part-time, full-time. It's a great way to work your way through college,
But there's also the issue of hiring high-tech workers into the federal government and really competing with those high-tech companies that can pay a lot of money.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We've had on the books ways for agencies to bring in IT, cyber professionals through a direct hire authority. In addition to that, we are doing a lot of work focused on cyber talent. That is kind of what's to come. We've been doing a lot of internal planning on potential regulations and legislation that we'd want to propose. And this is the work we're doing. We're trying to figure out both, Mimi, kind of on the high end of like these specialized skills where we know we need to compete and we need to recruit in a way that we can bring folks in, as well as on the end of bringing in early career talent. We focus on skills-based hiring, which is another way to expand opportunities, as well as in such a competitive market, we actually need to make sure that we're pulling in the individuals have the set of skills and not necessarily defined by, did you do get a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree? How is that commensurate with the job that you're applying for in government?
You know, at the beginning of the year, OPM raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour for federal employees. What results have you seen? What feedback have you gotten on that?
Well, you know, this is a big part of what we've been trying to do this past year, is set the federal government up as a model employer. So, and this is one way to do it. The $15 minimum wage impacted, you know, more than 70,000 federal employees in literally every county in this country. It's a floor. It's in many ways, if we talk about what it takes to create a living wage or set a living wage, that was very important to us. I will say what we announced yesterday, focus on wildland firefighters, was key. It was a building block. Many of those firefighters got the benefits of the minimum wage, and we took it another step further.
And these are federal firefighters who fight wildfires, and, you know, that season is upon us.
Yes, absolutely.
Were they not being paid very well? Why did that come about?
It's been a real challenge. You know, the pay was not competitive compared to their state counterparts, let's say in California or in the West, you know, in the Pacific Northwest. And so it was very challenging to retain them. These are very hard jobs. The jobs have shifted from being seasonal to, you know, kind of fire seasons to fire years. So we just had to look really carefully at how the job has changed and really make the job series much more commensurate with the current realities. And, you know, we're all battling kind of what we see in our environment right now with the effects of climate change, and certainly the fire season, now fire years, is upon us. And so and this was a particular bump in pay through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So the president fought and secured $600 million for firefighters. We have used that to provide supplemental pay and back pay through October of 2021, but it's a temporary fix. So we're going to be looking to work with our partners on the Hill to make this a permanent fix.
All right, quick pause here, and then we'll continue our conversation. I'm back now with the Director of the Office of Personnel Management, Kiran Ahuja. Director Ahuja, we were talking about the minimum wage being raised to $15 an hour at the beginning of the year, but that doesn't buy what it used to, given the high inflation rate. So are you considering further pay raises, further increases to offset that?
Exactly. You know, when I mentioned the $15 minimum wage, you know, really we see that as a floor. We wanted to make sure and determine that we didn't have any individuals in the federal government who were making below that. And like I said, we had about 70,000 who got that pay raise. But we know that that's certainly not enough. We've had successive pay increases for federal workers since the president's been in office. It's been a focus for us. For FY 2023, we've proposed 4.6%.
And that's a cost of living increase. So is that across the board?
That's across the board. That's across the board. Again, there'll be locality pay differentials. My understanding is our Hill colleagues, the Democrats in the House, have proposed 5.1%. So I think there's an acknowledgement here, probably even preceding where we're starting to see kind of the effects of inflation, that we do have to play a little bit of a catch-up with federal government salaries, you know, whether we're talking about compression on the high end or we're talking about the fact that we want to have the floor as the $15 minimum wage.
You know, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is going to require agencies to really ramp up hiring to address all of those new projects that they're responsible for. Tell us what you're doing to support that.
Absolutely. So when this historic law was passed, this historic investment, it involved a number of critical agencies, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, who have to do tremendous work around the country if we're talking about rebuilding roads and bridges and airports and ports. And then the timelines were incredibly tight. So we had a lot of these agencies coming to OPM little bit with their hair on fire of like, oh my goodness, how are we going to meet these timelines and the people that we need? So at OPM, we've done something that I actually want to replicate as we go forward. A real, again, really repositioning OPM as a strategic partner. And we set up tiger teams to go into these agencies. And we've had a very comprehensive effort with all these agencies working on their strategic workforce planning. We created a talent surge playbook. We have a talent dashboard where we're watching metrics of how positions are getting posted, what's the time to hire. We've been using government-wide what we call certs, or certificates, which is like you can share applicants off the cert from one agency to another. How novel, right? You don't have to like apply for every single job that gets posted. You post, let's say, for grant managers, and you want to fill them in multiple agencies or HR specialists. So these are the things that we've been trying out and getting agencies comfortable with doing those really best practices and things, and what we'd like to see in a more kind of broader scale going forward.
You brought back the Presidential Rank Awards.
Yes.
What are they, and why was it important for you to bring them back?
We did bring them back. They had been on a bit of hiatus in the past administration. They're a great way to recognize the incredible work of our executives in the federal government. It is the most prestigious award that an executive can get in the federal government. It is very competitive. OPM manages that award program, and it's something that's been around for a very, very long time. The president earlier this year did a program with the Presidential Rank Awards for the past year, and it goes a long way. I mean, this is a big part, and when I think about maybe my past year, a big part of it has been recognizing federal employees, the value that they bring to the work, the commitment that they make, their commitment to the mission of their agencies, and we want to make sure that those good people stay in their jobs. They feel that they're being valued, that they see a pathway through their own career and to higher leadership roles. And we also want to attract those who have not thought about government.
And you're right, they work incredibly hard,
Yeah.
and they're unsung heroes
Yes,
to
absolutely.
the American people.
Absolutely.
Well, looking back at this past year, tell me, what was your proudest moment?
Goodness. I think my proudest moment has been like the work that we've done internally inside the agency. I came into an agency that was fairly broken from, being on the precipice of dissolution. And it is the only place that I wanted to be in the federal government. I have a great affinity and just the calling of public service, of civil service is so meaningful. And these individuals who, a big part of what they do is to ensure that the people in our agencies are supported. We say people are our greatest and our biggest assets. And so for me, being able to rebuild this agency, to provide solid leadership, what's unfortunate about my anniversary is that I'm the longest serving director since 2015. So, we haven't had one serve for a full year.
Under a year?
Yes. And so that's not an accomplishment. I am not bragging about that at all. But I think, again, it speaks to the importance when we talk about who's in our institutions and the leadership. The leadership piece is so incredibly important. And for me, it means I take a great deal of pride and interest in making sure that our workforce feels supported and that we have the right people in the right seats. So all this other stuff we've been talking about is amazing, and we've been able to do it.
And we're glad that you're there in that seat.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.